Welcome to your 12-minute HR lesson. A lot of the time in HR, we don't have a lot of power. We have a lot of influence, which sometimes can be really effective. One of the most effective ways to use our influence is by taking charge with calmness. What does that mean? Well, let's get into it. I wasn't planning on doing this topic today, but there's a reason why it's jumped the queue. And that's because I literally, half an hour ago, I've just walked back in the door from attending a car accident. Early in the morning, I dropped my car off at the mechanic to get a WAF and a service. I was walking back and I saw a bunch of people on the road. So I quickly made my way there. And I'm not going to go into the details, but there'd been a minor car accident. Someone who'd been injured, in pain, 3 or 4 people all turning up, 2 people on the phone, not hysterical, but a bit emotional, calling the police. And I'm not taking full credit for this, but I'm taking partial credit for we kept the situation calm, we got it all organised, we find out from the guy what happened. And what's interesting, when 3 or 4 people turn up to an accident, you get this little bystander effect going on. Who knows who's in charge? Sometimes you do a whip around, like, is anyone here a doctor? Is anyone here a medic? One lady turned up and said, oh, look, I'm a physio. But no one sort of had that conversation. And this happened in the past where I've attended an accident and I was there with my friend and he was a junior doctor at the time. He identified this. One person says, oh, where's your credential? But the one guy who had sort of been in charge at the time, who was a volunteer paramedic, was very quickly to hand over control to my friend. Sometimes someone says, look, I'm in charge, I'm the most experienced. Often we just sort of navigate it. No one needs to tell everybody else what to do. But often in those ambiguous situations, some people exert a bit more influence. And I did that, but not because I felt that I needed to. It wasn't an ego thing, but I'm like, okay, well, let me just sort of calmly talk through the situation, which people can line up around. And that worked well. I talked to the guy, how are you? How's your neck? How's the pain? Don't worry. Police on their way. His details, got her details, got everything sort of practically sorted. So when the ambulance and the police turned up, and another guy very helpfully organised the traffic. So when the police and the ambulance turned up, we could very calmly hand over as good a situation to them as we could. So what we're talking today about is how to take charge with calm. By being calm, how can you exert influence and take charge of a situation? Like, I'm not saying I did, but I slightly did, and if anything, stopped someone else from trying to take charge unproductively, or take charge in a way that might have gone worse. We had the person who was at fault there and keeping her there and engaged and not upset, no one blaming, no one making accusations. These things can go south very quickly. And so I'm not saying I took charge, but if anyone took charge, it was me, and it stopped someone else from taking charge in a bad way. But before we get into how to do it, let's talk about 2 things. 1, what is it to be in charge? And 2, what is it to be calm? So to put it really simply, the person in charge is the person to whom everybody else is listening to and reacting and responding. The person who is putting out ideas and propositions and courses of action to which people are either agreeing, disagreeing, complying, or resisting. But the central theme is they are the person in charge of the agenda. They are the person putting things out. There's lots of different ways someone can be in charge. That could be a structural thing. They might be the appointed manager. They might be the appointed leader. They might be the team captain. But there's also the people who take charge in ambiguous situations without anyone officially appointing them the voice to which everybody else is listening. Sometimes it's by consensus, sometimes it's by self-nomination, sometimes it just evolves that way. But every so often, more often than not, someone's either completely in charge or slightly in charge, or somewhere in between. Now let's talk about calm. Someone who is calm, or someone who appears calm, is essentially someone who is presenting an emotionally neutral state. They are not upset, they're not angry, they're not sad, they're not happy. They are essentially neutral with a slightly positive twinge. They're in the middle there, slightly on the upbeat side. 55% of happy, if you like. If someone is calm, they are essentially the equivalent of the duck metaphor. They are the duck sitting on the top of the pond, paddling like crazy underneath the surface. You can't see it. So when someone is calm, they're emotionally as still as can be. So how do you do this? We've talked about taking charge. We've talked about calmness. How do you put those two things together? Well, here are your 4 parts. Here are your 4 steps. Step 1, don't take charge unless it is needed, unless you are the person who has to, or unless the conversation or things are going off track and you are certain that they are off track or not where they need to be, or they're going south, or we're building tension or conflict that we really don't need to. There's plenty of examples you can think of yourself where people have taken charge for no good reason, for no good benefit. They took charge because they thought they needed to, or they just like to, and we either went in the wrong direction, we stifled actual useful conversation, or things just didn't happen. So don't take charge unless you think you need to, unless you really think you need to determine the parameters and the propositions about what is being discussed. Part 2, listen. There's lots of adages. If you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, there's the proverb, better to hold your tongue and have people suspect you're an idiot than to open your mouth and prove them right. But overall, I'm a big fan of everyone should live by the 70-30 rule of listen 70% of the time, talk 30% of the time. And there's been lots of situations where people haven't come up with the right propositions because they haven't understood the situation correctly. So most of the time, the most useful thing to do is to listen, to take all of the information and have a good time to think. The people who end up taking things in the wrong direction are the people who feel that they had to have answers quickly, that an answer is better than no answer, and we need to get in there and come up with a plan without really getting all the information. Taking the time to listen, taking the time to think, taking the time to process gives you that window to really understand what it is that we're talking about, what the actual situation is, what we're trying to achieve, so that if you need to, you can take charge. Part 3, and this is an exaggeration for effect, is drop a truth bomb. Don't actually drop a truth bomb, but you'll get the idea. That sounds extravagant. That sounds quite extreme. And this isn't going to work all the time, but I'm calling it truth bomb so it sticks in your head. Sometimes if things are going off track and you're like, okay, I really need to take charge in this situation, identify what it is that is wrong, where are we going wrong, what we really need to be talking about, what we really need to be trying to achieve, what actions we actually need to take here. Figure out what the problem is and what potentially the right course of action is, and then calmly drop that into the conversation. Sometimes you're waiting, sometimes you have to crowbar yourself in there, but calmly and clearly dropping that truth bomb, or dropping that, look, I think we need to be doing. Actually, no, hang on. I think we've gone off track. What I think the situation is this. We need to be thinking about this. Or really what I think our actual problem here is X. We need to focus on X and finding a solution to X. doing that at the 1/3 mark is often quite useful because it, one, establishes if you do need to take charge, and two, gets you back on track before losing too much time. 4, and this is my real secret sauce, downward inflect your sentences. There's a subconscious convention in all of our language, particularly in New Zealand, but often around the world as well, where we upward inflect our sentences because we don't want to be right. We want to give people the opportunity to disagree. So we lift our sentences at the end. So it sounds like a proposition. I'm doing it now. Sounds like a tentative proposition, not an absolute proposition. When I do the opposite, when I drop my tone at the end of my statement, I'm making a definitive statement. I'm setting down a proposition that demands attention by its tone, not by its use of words, and not by its volume. If you want to take charge with calm, it's all in the tone. Not in the volume, not in the words, it's in the tone. And often that calm, unemotional, straightforward, to the point, calm tone with a downwards inflection, most of the time will get people stopping and listening and thinking about the proposition that you are putting down. They are rotating and gravitating and agreeing or disagreeing or discussing or arguing with what you think needs to be discussed. Thank you for listening. Thank you for checking out our website. Thank you for listening to our podcast. It's a service I don't often focus in on, but I also do one-on-one coaching. If this is something you could really think this could help your game a lot, and you really want to talk to me one-on-one about that, yeah, that's something we can do. Get in contact with me if that's something you're interested in. Otherwise, please check out our website, pragmatichrm.nz, for our courses, for our services, even for our free check-ins. If not, that's not a problem, but please share us, like us, repost us, get us out there so other people like you can listen to these lessons for free. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Thanks.